Acolytes, boo. Why the Whatever Cast podcast is under attack? How Brain Atlas is exposing modern dating and relationship. I mean, if you've seen the Whatever podcast, it's basically argumentation with, well, let's be honest here, bimbos. But it's actually exposing it gives young men a lot of information how the dating scene works, basically right now, how you can navigate it. So it has its uses, basically, and I looked at it a few times, not my kind of content, but I see the worth in it. And it was only a matter of time before people actually get, well, these days, mad about it, try to cancel them, because they are presumably toxic, blah, 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 the entire thing, acolytes. Sorry, just that.
It's beyond men. It's this.
What specifically?
Just like the fact of just like, you like, I don't know how to word this.
So in July of 2022, Brian Atlas switches his Whatever channel from making very successful prank videos to hosting his first Whatever podcast episode.
And we are live.
Now, Brian got his inspiration for the podcast from the now infamous Fresh and Fit podcast in Miami that was blowing up at the time.
Hello, chat, what do y'all want, man? Y'all want us to kick her off the show?
Oh.
What do you guys want to say this show?
The Fresh and Fit. Yeah. Oh, those guys are such hypocrites. So many. The amount of actual bollocks that came out of those acolytes. Woo! One of them pretending to be like the one of the straightest fuckers that there is. He actually is gay and just pretends. It's yeah.
I think that's what you've learned in life.
Seriously, can you stop cutting me off?
So if I'm not allowed to talk.
And even though Brian kept the core of the podcast the same,
Shout out to Fresh and Fit with inspiration. Check them out on YouTube.
he decided to polish it up by taking a calmer and less combative approach towards his guests and relying more on the concept of just letting the idiot.
What the fuck? Acolytes, I'm gonna be honest, this looks flat. I think this is photoshopped. Yes, I know my way around those things. Acolytes. Wisdom comes with time. Definitively comes.
Dig their own grave.
Would you describe yourself as a feminist?
Yes.
Do you believe in gender equality?
Yeah.
See? Those fuckers hang around. They were flat there.
Of course.
Okay, don't you think you ought to split the bill on the first date?
No, because my main concern with gender equality is through, like, yes, in society, like, fixing that, and through, like, the system, but...
This turned out to...
Acolytes, if somebody argues with you like that, drop them. There are a lot of words that were said, and it was nothing. It had nothing to do with the question.
Be a brilliant move, since it allowed Brian to perfectly market the Whatever channel on social media by cleverly splashing the Whatever logo all over the studio and utilizing both Twitter and TikTok to push out a constant barrage of viral clips.
I didn't really like the guy. I more just wanted to see if I could break his heart. It was fun.
So did you break his heart then?
I hope I did a little damage.
Why do you hope that you did a little damage?
I like humbling men.
This is a monster.
Made the Whatever podcast the most talked about dating podcast online. However, with all of that success comes a lot of attention and a lot of hate.
Because I'm pretty sure the Whatever podcast is despicable.
Every time I feel like we stamp out a roach, aka a white man with a podcast like this.
For dudes with terrible opinions.
Brian, bro. I don't want any more Brian, his little voice.
This guy looks like a PDF file. If you look up freaking PDF file in the freaking, I don't know, in a fucking school book, this is the face.
And his little crap. The most dripless person you've ever seen in your life.
I
hope that they crash and burn.
So this all begs the question, where does the hate come from and why do major publications go out of their way to attack the Whatever podcast? Well, it comes from the fact that the Whatever podcast does two things very well. Brian will calmly and respectfully use logic and reason to simply use their own arguments against them.
Like, just put more effort into, like, coming up with something
There's so many
different.
things that you could do.
Just put more effort and...
Just put in more effort, says the panel of women that never planned a first date in their lives.
Ouch, they definitely didn't like that one. Please drop a like on the video if you think that modern women are completely blind to their own hypocrisy, and comment down below what you think. When someone like Brian exposes this while enjoying massive success online, then a general narrative states that he must be taken down, and the mainstream media outlets will jump at the chance to do so. Which brings us to May the 2nd of 2023, when Vice dropped a poorly researched hit piece accusing the podcast of making women look dumb. Now, clearly, Vice never actually watched any of the episodes, or they would have
there isn't only dumb women on there. I overdone it a bit with the bimbo statement beforehand, but there are a lot of wise women that actually can argue in there. But there are also a lot of freaks in there.
Known that these women do not need any help with looking dumb.
You guys are so shallow. Shallow. I like a 6'4" guy.
6'4".
Yes, because
5'2",
my
6'4".
last relationship, I was with a 6'4" guy.
By the way,
and
they're
he
not
was
going to see you there.
He was so big,
okay.
perfect height.
Just perfect.
Yeah.
Now, the article tries to frame these women as innocent little creatures that come on the podcast just to get some attention, whilst Brian, the host, is just a big mean manipulator. But in reality,
then don't come on the thing. Simple as that. It's your decision. You can say no and just not come on the podcast. Simple as that.
Brian is actually the one who gets attacked a lot on the podcast, and not for his arguments, but simply for who he is.
My question to you is, I disagree with you on...
Yeah, I bet you do.
What?
White boy. Like, that's so different.
And you're white.
If
you're literally a white man looking at me, telling me...
That's a bit racist.
Oh my god, no, you're one of those.
You don't think you can be racist towards someone who's white?
No, I don't.
This blatant form of racism conducted by so many liberal women when they don't get their way is never mentioned in any of the major publications, even though they love to constantly whine about inclusivity and equality. Now, luckily, Brian is not afraid to call women out on this hypocritical and toxic behavior.
Hold on.
Okay, sure.
If there was a black girl at this table and I was attempting to dismiss her point because of her skin color, would it be my preference if a girl just didn't even have social media? Probably.
This is giving red flags. I'm not gonna lie.
See, but here's the interesting thing is that men are not allowed to have preferences, standards, and boundaries. Nobody bats an eye when a woman says, I want XYZ in a partner. But the moment a guy says boundaries, preferences, and standards, oh, misogyny, red flag.
Now, not only does Brian protect himself very well from toxic feminists, but he also manages to protect his skin and is looking great for a guy in his late 30s. And with today's sponsor, Teach Henley, you can do the same. With Teach Henley, you get access to a great skincare line that is uncomplicated to use. And
by the way, if you want to protect your skin, simple as that, acolytes. I just use Feuchtigkeitscreme. That's enough. Just a cream that gives your skin moistness. I think that you could do way better than that. You could just specialize yourself on complicated skincare, Diego. I mean, I wouldn't throw it away per se. Maybe I'm gonna try it at one point, because yes, even the face behind the mask still needs a bit of moisturizing. Yes. And by the way, when I was alive, a mere young man, 10,000 years ago, with 37, I looked like 30. So there you have it. Skin moisturization is a very good thing. Yeah. It is what it is, acolytes. It is what it is. But this, if you're actually interested in this, hey, and you say, hey, you want this specific product or something high quality, you have the cash right now, then try it. Just get the guy's link. How is he? FBE Capital. Get his link and do it. Just do it. Just get it and it's fine. Because skincare is actually quite... I mean, I personally feel refreshed afterwards. So there's that.
From a major publication, since on the 2nd of June, the New York Post also released a hit piece on Brian and whatever titled...
Yeah, by the way, the bimbo point, yes, Destiny was also there. It was a shit show, man.
Making women look dumb is a disturbing new podcast trend. Again, claiming that Brian belittles female guests and makes them look dumb. After this, a couple of smaller outlets and channels piled on, but the story never really got any traction and died out afterwards. However, one hater in particular stood out by the name of Lila Rose, who was a content creator, and Lila first used whatever to boost her exposure, only to then turn around and bite Ryan and whatever like the true snake that she is.
Yeah.
Do you agree with my assessment that it takes these women and just makes fun of them, and it just feeds angry men?
I think it does a lot of that, but I don't know that the host has a fully developed worldview.
Is he a Christian?
I don't think so. Yeah.
That would help.
This woman is giving new meaning to the term speaking with forked tongue, because when she was reviewing her experience on the Whatever podcast with Ruslan, she had a completely different story.
Yeah, I think it's such a unique place on the internet to have a space where people from extraordinarily different backgrounds and worldviews and behavior sets are coming together to talk very candidly and in a very vulnerable way, I feel. I mean, the people just kind of sharing about their very personal lives in a way that is not there to like shame each other. I don't think that that's not my experience on the show anyways.
Do you agree with my assessment that it takes these women and just makes fun of them, and it just feeds angry men?
I think it does a lot of that.
It's like people generally, they're very courteous with each other.
I think there's a tendency to objectify women. Like even some of the things that the host did, I didn't approve of. I didn't like what he did. I don't think he has to do that for the podcast.
So after her claiming it was a waste of time and that the host is exploiting vulnerable women, she then goes back on the podcast 2 more times, once in June and once in August, and continues to milk the podcast like crazy for clips and content for both of her channels.
But still, didn't the host actually know this? I mean, if you know this, expose her and then go in.
While fully understanding how this all benefits her.
Podcast exploration thing, which is very exciting.
And you've since blown up.
We're growing, thank God. Yeah, we've got amazing listeners.
Red Pill Space.
Yeah.
You're like a household name now.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, is whatever like Red Pill?
This woman is just like the OF and Instagram models that she despises that go on whatever just to go viral, hoping to boost their socials and make lots of money.
My understanding of the podcast was they're bringing these women in who don't know at all what they're talking about and making them look like idiots.
Now it's funny how this moron is basically repeating the Vice article verbatim as if he wrote the damn thing, because just like the writer of the Vice article, he hasn't even watched the podcast himself except for 20 seconds of clips.
That was the like 10-second, or maybe I've watched like 2 or 3 clips.
I think
that's what it looked like.
I mean, talk about the pot calling the kettle black, since this guy's...
This is the problem with journalists these days. Make more research. You're not a fucking reactionary channel. I'm going off the cuff here, everything that I have. If I have more information, I spread more information. But for fuck's sake, just watching a clip and claiming that you're an expert, just fuck off, honestly.
This whole argument is about how the Whatever podcast is only inviting uneducated idiots to talk about topics that they have no knowledge of, while he hasn't even watched the podcast and has no idea what's actually going on. And so you see, these are the types of snakes that attack the Whatever podcast and will write articles such as the Vice and New York articles about making women look bad, all while never even watching the episodes. But what's even more noticeable is that this constant crying about whatever making women look bad is completely missing the point, which is that the only reason why these women look bad is because they are trying to defend idiotic feminist propaganda, which is completely void of logic and based entirely on feelings.
You guys are all just like really misogynistic.
How do you define misogyny? No, how do you define misogyny?
I don't know. I don't like this.
Now, another important point to make here, and one that proves that the majority of haters has never actually watched the Whatever podcast, is that many of the episodes actually feature a lot of intelligent women that are excellent at voicing their opinion and will wipe the floor with other women that only operate on feelings.
Like I said, my whole thing is I think feminism is very counterproductive to women, and like even going into a whole nother aspect of this, when I see actual civil rights deterioration for women, which is what feminism should stand up for.
Obviously evolved now, and it's like, it's your choice. Like, yeah, if you're a girl and you want to have a job, go have a job, but in no way or shape or form like is it shameful to be a housewife.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but we also have to always acknowledge that that's a luxury that so many women don't have. And so like feminism, there's aspects of feminism that do benefit benefit women, just like there's aspects of feminism that might hurt women and hurt men.
And so clearly, the women who use facts and logic actually come off looking very good, since they look poised and knowledgeable and are great at debating different issues, which proves that the Whatever podcast is not out here trying to make women look dumb, but it's about debunking feminist propaganda and the hypocrisy that exists in society today when it comes to dating and relationships.
Yes, it is. And by the way, again, the guy does a good job of it, very respectful, but I think we're dodging a big... because he has a new co-host that's extremely aggressive towards those people, or is it a co-host? He's particularly often there. Yeah, it's funny to watch him, by the way. So.
Now, the counter argument that you'll hear a lot is that all the viral clips are of women looking dumb and not of women looking poised and making excellent points. Well, to that I say, you cannot control what goes viral because society and the algorithm do. And so you can't then blame Brian for picking clips that are most likely to go viral to best promote his podcast, since in the end, it is his full-time job.
And second of all, you can do an experiment if you want. Because I am sure Brian doesn't do it his own, the editor does. And watching two clips where they sound intelligent, one where they sound dumb as fuck, the dumbest fuck one would just make better, well, more clicks. Simple as that.
So just like companies use shiny things to lure you in with their commercials, the Whatever podcast uses the most likely to go viral clips to lure you in and then to later get you involved in the larger conversation about dating and life in general. Now, the problem isn't Brian or the Whatever podcast, but it is the fact that modern women are lying to younger women, filling their heads with a bunch of delusional beliefs. The big one being, you can do whatever you want and that people will have to like you and date you as if consequences do not exist and you can just make up your own reality. However, when these women then go out into the real world and get confronted by how men view them, they will get very angry since no one ever told them no or told them that they were wrong and were engaging in undesirable behavior. Now, to be fair, the Whatever podcast is not without blame for some of the criticism it's receiving, since Brian has made some serious mistakes on the podcast, making it very easy for his critics to hate on Whatever and call it misogyny. For example, when he had this guy on the podcast who is an absolute douchebag and a certified creep with some crazy extracurricular activities that I can't even mention on this platform, he actually caused the entire show to turn to shit due to the men defending a terrible stance on staying in certain relationships. Now, this is exactly what I meant when I said that the women make themselves look bad when they argue illogical beliefs. Because when you are defending stupidity, there's just no way you're going to come out looking good. Now, obviously, this does not happen often on the podcast, but when it does happen, it's these types of examples that will be used to paint the entire podcast as a women-bashing hellhole. Brian has managed to create a very nice product with the Whatever podcast that he should definitely be proud of and that he should protect with his life. Because in today's climate, you have to carefully screen your guest to make sure that the discussion does not get out of control, since this only opens him up to demonetization and deplatforming. Now, in today's climate, it really doesn't take much for men to get demonetized or even deplatformed, since simply having a podcast and being a man is already a bad thing in itself. The New York Times even wrote an article about this titled, "Would You Date a Podcast Bro?" which is all about how it is a red flag to simply have a podcast and exist as a man. And the men with podcasts are full of themselves and are contributing nothing to society. Which all just proves the true motivation behind the Whatever attacks, which is that women with podcasts are good and men with podcasts are bad. Women are constantly getting away with saying the most vile and misandrous things about men, and they are never getting criticized for it. In fact, they actually get celebrated and are called brave and fearless, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, on the surface, the two articles attacking Brian and Whatever podcast might seem like a small bump on the road. However, as we've seen time and time again on YouTube, whenever a major publication starts writing about a creator in a negative way, the platform gets very upset quickly and will start to make the creator's life a living hell. You often see impressions nosedive, random videos getting demonetized, and sometimes even strikes popping up out of nowhere on videos that have been on the platform for years. The Vice article in May perfectly correlates with a massive drop in views in the same month, and the additional piling on in the months after, explain why the podcast is now struggling to get back to its previous highs. It is obvious that the success of the Whatever podcast...
I mean, you will have lows and highs. It is what it is. And the thematic repeats itself constantly, so it gets boring after a while. It is what it is.
The following attacks is yet another example of society, and in particular feminists, not being able to handle when they are outed for doing the very same thing they love to accuse men of. Now, the point of the Whatever podcast is not to make women look bad, it is to challenge people on their own beliefs and arguments, especially when they make it their life's purpose. If you're going to be loud about the existence of a patriarchy or calling everything misogyny, then you should at least know what you're talking about and understand the words that you're using. Since if you go on a podcast and say nothing but nonsense for 3 or 5 hours straight, then selecting 1 or 2 clips for a teaser is not making you look dumb, you simply are dumb. This was
Fair
why
enough.
the Whatever podcast is under attack. Please drop a like on the video and
Fair enough. Fair effing enough. Yes, good video, by the way. I agree with him on basically a lot of things. Whoa, this is 1 year old. Damn, why was this in my feed then? Irrelevant, probably. Oh, I guess that some big YouTuber actually watched it and it exploded again, because yes, this can happen to a lot of videos that I actually watched or that just came out, start showing up in the feed in the recommendations. So yeah, but still a very good video, very good one. Actually, I agree with him on this to a very high degree. And at the end of the day, it's a year, maybe a few things changed. I didn't watch the Whatever podcast for a long time. So I just know from clips, because the clips, for a while, the clips were everywhere for me. No matter if I watched it or not, they were just everywhere. But irrelevant. Good. As it is, acolytes, good night.